morning. What great speakers we've had so far. I'm going to be talking about something maybe a little bit differently for you. Don't worry about the Play-Doh bit, we'll come to that in a minute. As you've heard, my name is Laura. This week I'm calling myself a leadership and culture coach. It changes regularly depending on how I'm working with people and the things that I learn. Because I'm an expert at what I do, but not because I'm the best, not because I've learned it all, not because I know it all, but because I continue to push myself to learn and grow and change. And that's really kind of this culture piece that I want to talk to you about today and what that means. So, this is me. Does that work? Yes, it does. Lovely. This is me. I have been in senior leadership for over 15 years. Sorry, was that a gasp of horror at me not being old enough? You're absolutely right. And I've seen leadership done really well, and I've seen it done really not so well. And I, myself, have made some really big mistakes along the way. So I always say to people, I stand here before you as a recovering sufferer of imposter syndrome. I stand here as somebody who hasn't believed in myself in the past. I stand here as somebody who has made really big mistakes when trying to implement strategy in organizations. And I've also learned how to turn all that stuff around and do things a lot better. So what I'm going to share with you today is some stuff that you can take away and put into practice straight away within your own organizations. Begin to challenge your own thinking a little bit and how you look at things and how you do it. But there's also going to be stuff that you can pass on to your clients to encourage them to move forward, to stretch themselves a little, and to adapt more as the times change around us. So, as I said, I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've made many mistakes along the way. The job title's not important. The stuff on here isn't really important. But what is important is the actual work. So what I do with organizations and leaders is I help them to become intentional with their behavior. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, it means that when we say things like, oh, well, that's just how I've always done things and it's kind of worked out okay, or, well, I read a book once and then that's okay, is that when we just say, I've always done it this way, I've always been this way, it's just who I am, we're a slave to the things that we've learned in the past, and we're not necessarily keeping ourselves up to date and challenging ourselves appropriately. So I help people be intentional with their behaviors, to choose the behaviors that they show up with. And this is really important now because what we expect as our organizations, from our clients, from our partnerships, is our expectations are very different to how they used to be. So I'm a bit of a problem solver, because in organizations, I work with them when they come to me. Some organizations are great. They're like, I know I need to work on my culture, or I know I want to work on my culture. They're the best ones to work with. But often we end up in a bit of conversation around culture without really expecting to. So sometimes I get asked to work with an organization because my turnover is getting a bit high and I'm not really sure what's happened. Or I might be working with somebody because they've said to me, I've got a problem with my senior leadership team. They're not communicating well with each other. Or it might be that our engagement from staff is lower than we would like it to be. All of these things link back into culture. So really, you can drop all the fancy job titles. I'm a bit of a problem solver at heart. Now, leadership for all of us comes from, and how we form it is, yes, by the things that we learn and the things that we do, but also about the experiences and the examples that we have around us. So actually, a lot of your leadership skills that you've developed, you will have begun to learn in childhood. So I want you to take a bit of a walk down memory lane with me for a second, okay? Now, anybody who wasn't around in the 90s, have yourselves a little nap. We'll wake you up in a minute, because some of this might be a bit lost on you. So, remember these? Yeah? It was great. It's an innovation in the 90s. I mean, if I go slightly further back, it came with a suitcase for all the very young ones in the room. I'm trying not to isolate anybody. Used to come with a suitcase that had the battery in, and it was brilliant because it meant that we could take communication with us wherever we went. It was brilliant. It was an absolute huge step forwards. And now we have these things. So this isn't just so that I can have communication on a mobile basis. This is my alarm clock. I can use this as my TV. I use it as my calendar. It takes over now so much. The evolution in the technology in that time has been huge. Remember these? Do you remember when you used to put them in and it would chew up the thing and you had to try and negotiate the tape back out? And you'd have to wind the tape back in with your fingers. You could only keep so many of these at home because you had to have the storage space. If somebody hadn't rewound it first, you would put the thing in, it would be at the end, you'd have to spend 10 minutes rewinding the thing before you could watch it. Whereas nowadays, other streaming platforms are available, it's all at our fingertips, hundreds and thousands of bits of information. And it was the same. Back in the 90s when we looked at leadership, our window of what we knew was actually really small. So all of my practice is based in neuroscience. What we knew back then was like the videotape. What we know now, what we can get access to as leaders, is like the streaming service that we can get. Remember these ones? Do you remember, for those of you who've never used a fax machine before, you had to dial the number and phone the thing to try and get the fax through. But if the person picked up the thing on the other side, they picked up the phone, it would cut it off, your communication wouldn't go through. And if you were the person who picked it up, you'd just hear like screaming down the telephone noise, and you were like, oh no, it was meant to be a fax. The person had to try again. And of course, now it's instantaneous. I can send a message to hundreds and hundreds of people, and more, all at the same time, and not have to worry about that connection being interrupted, as long as I have good Wi-Fi or good mobile service. But I'm not talking about that today. So, you all found your way here, presumably. I'm guessing you didn't have to stop part way, put the map on the bonnet of your car, and figure out where you were going. The great thing about this, these are brilliant, and some people still do keep paper. I do have a paper map in my car, because I'm a dinosaur. What I can do now is I could probably tell you how to get from the airport to McDonald's in any country in the world. I'm not gonna, you'll be pleased to know. But it's possible because now we have access to so much more information. We can take direction wherever we are from anywhere in the world at any given time. And last but not least, let's look at this. For those of you who don't know, this is a roll of film. You had 21 snaps on it, and then you had to wait a week because you had to give it to somebody else, and they would develop it, and then they'd give it you back a week later. And the really scary thing with this is that they saw your pictures first. So nowadays, of course, I take hundreds and thousands, literally, particularly of my three-legged dog, who's super cute, by the way. Come and see me later for pictures. Hundreds and thousands of photographs that I carry around with me all the time. My entire son's life is documented in my phone, and whenever I miss him when I'm away somewhere, I can just scroll myself through and have a little look through his whole life. And nobody gets to see that before me. Unless I'm hacked, obviously. But again, another subject. So, when we look at leadership practice in this, and you're probably thinking, okay, Laura, fine, but why are you showing us all this stuff about the 90s? We know we've moved on and we know that things have changed. But actually, leadership lessons have to evolve too, which is why often our practices now can be a little bit archaic or a little bit dated a bit further back, and it does change really quickly. There is some really great literature from the 1990s. You may have all read them. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Anyone read that one? Yeah? It's a great book. It tells us about how to be personally reflective, right? About how to look at ourselves, change our behavior, make steps moving forwards. But nowadays, our organizations and our cultures in our places, our people, they expect something different of us. They don't just expect you to be self-aware. They expect you to be inclusive, and they expect you to engage with them and create culture that fosters psychological safety, so that they're expecting more from our leaders and from our workspaces now. Another one, the 1-minute manager. Does anyone remember that one? There's a couple of nods in the room. Again, it was great. It gave you really quick tools. I'm going to dip in, I'm going to dip out, I'm going to do this thing for you super quick, I'm going to manage my time really effectively. But it's so transactional, we look at it now. There's no space in there for collaboration, for engagement. And we know, particularly as our other generations are coming through in the workplace now, they're not tolerant of those behaviours anymore. So we do need to bend and flex. So, given that we have these outdated practices still knocking around, we need to think, where am I going to get the other information to help me bring things up to speed? So, I said to you before, my background's in neuroscience. It's where all this stuff comes from. So I'm going to, hang on, I'm going to chuck my pages over. There's a few of you in the room who'll get this. I'm of a certain age where sometimes you need to look at your notes, so just bear with me as I go. Okay, so these old things, the books we talked about, they don't necessarily buy into the modern practices that people are expecting of us. So given that everything that I talk about is based in neuroscience, I want to kind of link into how that stuff that we learned back in the 90s impacts on the stuff that we do today. Because we've all moved on from the mobile phone in its infancy. We've all moved on from VHS tapes, I'm assuming. But what we haven't necessarily moved on from is some of that archaic leadership practice. So let's have a look at a little bit of the neuroscience just quickly. Okay. In our brains, we have this thing that we call the filter system, right? And this filter system is based on this bunch of stuff here, but also a whole load of other things. This list is not exhaustive. But it's formed by things like the kind of household that we were raised in, the culture that we grew up in, the religion that we have, the people who are around us, whether you had strict parents or hippie parents, whether you had whatever it might be, okay? And we learned these things, a lot of our behaviors, between the ages of 7 and 11, most of those are set in practice in terms of our preferences. And we learn those from the people around us who are in authority. So from our parents, this is where some of you might be cringing, trying to compare your own behavior to other people around you. But from our parents, from our teachers, from social workers, from police officers, whoever you had interactions with, that has an impact on what forms your behavior as it stands today. So what happens is our brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes information that it gets through, and it comes up with this idea of, okay, I've run it through the filter system, my perception, and therefore I think this is the right thing to do moving forward. Right? This is why you can get two managers or two people, anybody, look at exactly the same thing and see something different. The problem with this filter system, which is brilliant, by the way, because we actually receive about 5 to 7 million pieces of information per second, right? So if you want an excuse as to why you're knackered at the end of the day, use that one. And they reckon if you're somewhere like Times Square, it's up to about 12 million pieces of information per second. And you're receiving that through all 5 of your senses absolutely all the time. So your brain can't consciously process all that stuff. So it has to filter things out so that it knows what you're going to pay attention to. So I'll give you an example of this. I have a spear. I don't have a spear. I have a fear of spiders. Okay? So if a spider appeared in my peripheral vision, my filter system would immediately tell me that I'm not okay. My body would react by giving me a whole bunch of chemicals that made me behave in a certain way. And then what popped out the front would be the behavior in response to that, which would be me running, screaming off the stage. So if that happens, you know what's gone on. Whereas another person will see the spider, and their filter system will go, that's okay, I'm not frightened of spiders. And so their chemicals will do something different, and their behavior will be different. They'll go, well, I'll just go ahead and pick that spider up and put it outside. And those people are wrong, just so you know. But, so, two leaders are looking at something completely the different way. This filter system is brilliant in the sense that it makes us all unique. No two people, not even two identical twins, will have exactly the same memories, experiences formed in their filter system. The problem with this, and where it becomes an issue for us, is that it can make us rigid and inflexible, because this is also part of the brain that forms our unconscious biases and sometimes even our conscious biases. And it's those things that we need to look at and be really conscious and aware of. Are you all with me so far? I haven't lost you in the science. Lovely, great. Okay, so given that we don't want to be rigid, given that we want to be engaging with our workforces, that we want to create the kind of environments where people can feel comfortable, just throwing away my paper, let's have a look then at the actual Play-Doh effect. Okay. My first job here is to wrestle the lid off some Play-Doh. Preparation, Laura. There we go. Okay. All familiar with Play-Doh, I'm assuming? Yes, lovely. Okay, this is me in my first leadership role. Okay? I feel fairly perfect. I'm like right out manufacturer's settings here. Never been played with before, never had all the experiences that I need to have, but I am enthusiastic. So I trot into my first leadership role, very enthusiastic, but a little bit green around the ears. And this is what my team gets from me. I've read some books, I've done some courses, and it looks nice, right? Well, it does to me. I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to mix my colors, so, you know. The problem is that the first time I ran into a problem, and one of my first big problems was I wrote a new strategy, and I was like, guys, we've got a new strategy. Here it is. This is going to be amazing. We're going to change the world with this. I was working in the third sector as well, so it was like, this is definitely life-changing stuff. So there's a chap over here who's shaking his head. He's like, nah, you've lost them already. You're absolutely right. They were like that. What? Who put this strategy together? Why is it going to make all the impact in the world? So I kind of, at that stage, got my first knock. So all of a sudden, my leadership journey is looking a little bit different. My confidence is looking a little bit different, and I've changed somewhat. So next time I go, okay, guys, we're going to take a step back here for a second, because that clearly didn't work. We've got this. What I meant to say was, this is the first draft of the strategy, but I'd really love your input in it and see what's going to work with it, what isn't going to work with it. And so through that process and the feedback that I got, I was able to kind of mold into something a little bit different. But my filter system isn't really comfortable with that molding. My filter system is designed to keep me safe from things that are uncomfortable. So I have to work at this, and I have to continue to be malleable, and I have to continue to move around in order to be the best version of me that I can be. And it's great doing that for myself, but actually my team have certain expectations of me as well. My stakeholders, my partners, the people around me have those expectations of me too. So I've now got my nice little molded and changed piece of Play-Doh. That was a great learning experience. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm happy with the learning I'm done. Pretty proud of it. Looks great. Love that the colours aren't mixed. What happens if I leave that Play-Doh there? Let's take you back to your childhood again for a second. If I just leave that Play-Doh there, what happens to the Play-Doh? Dries out. Dries out, it crumbles, it cracks. It doesn't stay like I want it to. And that's exactly what happens with our leadership practices. If we read a book once, if you did the course 10 years ago, great, that's fantastic, you've done some brilliant shaping. But it doesn't stop there, and it's exactly the same with culture. Lots of organizations tell me, we've got great culture. And I'm like, super, define it for me. Tell me what it is. What? And I say to them, if I walked around everybody in your organisation, I said to them, what's the culture here? I'd get exactly the same answer, right? Rarely. And yet, because we haven't defined it, how do we all know actually what it is that we're working towards? Because there's these words in life that we throw around without definition, right? Successful, I want to be successful. I want to be happy. I want to be the best leader, right? What does leadership actually mean? What does culture actually mean? And I'm not here to give you the answer, right? Because I'm not in the business of creating 100 carbon copies of exactly the same leader. I'm in the business of identifying what is it that makes you so unique and special, that makes you the place that somebody wants to come and work, that makes your strategic plan the place that's going to thrive, that's going to make sure that all your KPIs are met and that people are working together and communicating well. Everybody's model should look so different because you are all unique and individual in the way that you are. But the second you put that Play-Doh on the shelf, well, the time starts to tick on how quickly that Play-Doh is drying out. So, I was wondering, I'm not going to make you come up, but could I have 4 brave people who are willing to play with some Play-Doh for me? This is the point where, oh, just to let you know, at this point, I came through here earlier on and I already gathered up all the tumbleweed and I put it outside. So, so that's not here anymore. You don't have to worry about it. So, who wants to play? Lovely, thank you. You don't even have to come up. Okay, right, go on then. We'll stand you at the front here. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many have we got? Lovely, thank you very much. Oh, I've got 5 now. Oh, there we go. Okay, so take your lids off because we've already established that's the toughest bit to do. And then I'm going to give you your remit. Okay, so all got your Play-Doh out? No? It's tough, see? Even getting it out of the box is a challenge. You might need to bash it off the table. Okay. So there's a little bit of a catch to this, okay, as you obviously thought they probably would be. Okay, so white, I'm going to refer to you by colours if that's okay, because it's easier for me. So white, could you just pop yours on the table for me a second? Lovely, thank you. Okay, so white, you're all going to create me a model of what represents good leadership to you, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be good. You know, we're not a fine arts class. Nobody's going to judge you for it. But I want you to create something that kind of defines what good leadership, or something that might represent good leadership, okay? So you've got a couple of seconds to think about that while I give you the other things that you need to do. So white, you're not going to touch your Play-Doh, right? But I still want you to shape it into something brilliant. Green, you're going to close your eyes, no peeking, right? So you need to create this and put something on the table for us, but not looking, okay? And the other 2, you can just crack on, all right? So, lovely, on you go. So, as they're building their fabulous models that are going to absolutely blow you all away, this is a really important question to consider, is what is the purpose of your leadership? Okay, because if you don't know what the purpose of your leadership is, then it's like running a business without a business plan. I'm going to show up as a leader, but I'm not going to tell you the kind of leader I'm going to be. I'm not going to tell you what kind of qualities that you can expect from me. And therefore, you don't get the ability to be able to challenge me either. Lovely. Brown, stop. You're out of time. Pop yours down, please. Lovely. So what is the purpose of your leadership then? And so first thing you might need to do is clarify what the word purpose means for you. And then you need to clarify what leadership means, okay? Am I the kind of leader who just comes and tells you all what to do and I expect that to work? Am I the kind of leader who's going to take your opinions into consideration as I'm doing things? Am I the kind of leader who's showing up as a servant leadership, right? So if you're not familiar with these titles, come and catch me afterwards and I'll explain a little bit more to you about what all of this means and why it's so important. Because actually, every type, we often think, if you have heard of leadership styles before, you might think, oh, I don't want to be this particular style, or I do want to be this particular type. There's merit in all of them, right? So it's about identifying what is it that's really good for you, and then putting into practice those things and communicating it with others. Lovely. Have a stop for me. So let's have a look and see what we've got. So can we have a look at yours? Okay. Tell us about it.
Just a round ball.
Okay.
Yep.
What does that represent for leadership?
A rounded person.
Oh, nice. Okay. Lovely. How easy was that?
It was quite easy just to roll it up and down.
Lovely. Feel any time pressure at all?
No.
No? Lovely. Great. David's had a lovely time. Super. How was that? What have you got? Okay. Lovely. Talk us through it.
The only thing I can make with my eyes closed.
Oh, the only thing you can make with your eyes closed. Lovely. That's a really important point. Thank you. How's yours?
Blank.
It's a bit blank. Why is it blank? I asked you to make a model of leadership.
I didn't do anything.
Lovely. I wonder what the lesson there is. And how was yours?
It's pretty pathetic.
Okay.
It's meant to be an anchor and an arrow.
An anchor and an arrow. Lovely. Why isn't it an anchor or an arrow?
Because it's not a very good model.
Okay, because it's not a very good model. Would it have been a better model if you had more time?
Probably not.
That's not the right answer. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. You can pop your Play-Doh back for me. Okay, so what this demonstrates to us is there's a couple of things that we think through when we think about leadership, right? It's like we might be that, okay, we're going to do the culture thing, but we're going to rush it. We're going to go, yeah, we had a conversation about it once. Done. Great, lovely. The problem is if we rush it or we don't give time to it, we're not nurturing it to grow in the way that we're going to need it to, and it's not going to give us the results that we expect or that our people deserve or our clients deserve or our stakeholders deserve. Moving on to the next example there, you can't touch it, okay? So I'm going to read a book, I might learn some stuff, but I'm not actually going to do anything with it. So when we learn stuff, we actually have to physically get involved. We have to make the shaping happen. We have to call people to account. We have to challenge behaviors in and around us so that if it doesn't align with our culture, that we are pulling people up and saying, that's not how we do things here. Often poor behavior is overlooked and it leads to really toxic culture. You may have heard the saying before that the poorest behavior that's ignored is the behavior that's accepted, right? So if there's somebody in your organization or even in your clients' organizations who are not behaving, not towing the line, not performing the way that they need to, if that behavior isn't dealt with, that behavior is accepted. And we all know that when we let poor behavior go, the impact on other people within an organization is a real morale dip. So, nextly, that's not a word, is it? Next, I said, okay, well, you can do it, but you can't look at it. This is often the kind of culture that I come across in organizations. We're trying to do good culture, we're trying to do behaviors in the right way, but we're not actually looking at culture. We're not taking the time to really pick it apart and analyze it and determine what does it mean and how is it going to shape the organization moving forwards. But when we give it time and we allow people to play a little bit with it and understand it, we end up with a more coherent model of what our culture looks like. The more malleable we can be with our own behaviors and our culture, first and foremost, what it gives us is clarity, right? We can't just chase something. Yeah, we've got great culture. Great, what does that mean? Because if I'm going to go ahead and get something, I need to know exactly what I'm working towards. Because there might be people in your organization who thinks that they are bang on culture, but because you've never told them what it is, it might be completely different. So we need to get clarity first and foremost, and then we need to bring everybody on board with us. We need to talk about it, right? The awareness piece is really important. Not only are we going to look at our culture and get clear on what it is, but we're going to keep paying attention. We're going to keep investing in culture. We're going to keep investing in the conversation. We're going to filter out the stuff that doesn't work. We're going to focus on the stuff that does. And then we're going to hold ourselves to account. So we're going to hold ourselves to account by the way that we review it, but we are also going to hold each other to account on their behaviours. Do you remember that thing? Did you notice that thing you did in that meeting where you talked over another colleague? I just wanted to point that out in case you hadn't noticed it. You know that thing where you consistently get that report in 2 days late? Let's have a conversation about how we're going to turn that around and move that forwards. These uncomfortable things are often things that we avoid in our organisations, but sometimes it's the little things that can make really significant impact. So why does all this stuff actually matter, right? Why does it really, really matter? Well, the kind of statistics speak for themselves. I'm not going to read them out because hopefully you can all read. These are UK statistics based on last year. And what they tell us is that now things are changing in our work streams, in the people who are coming through to us, is that people are much less likely to settle. There is no such thing as a career for life anymore. And so people will go where the culture feels good, and where the culture gives them something, where the culture recognizes them as a person within that. So, if we don't want to be sitting in those statistics, just like the technology has moved on from the 90s, our leadership practices need to move forward with the expectations of the workforce in order to make us employer of choice, in order to make us partner of choice, in order to make us a client of choice, in order to make ourselves the supplier of choice. Because now relationships are coming so much more into these interactions. Expectations have changed just the way that technology has. So there is a lot less loyalty as well. People will move where they feel valued. Culture is what sets you apart from your competitors. It's what makes you the person that people want to be around, the place that people want to be around. We used to call this stuff soft skills. Do you remember that? We used to call it soft skills. The reason I put a question mark after it is because actually it's often the hardest stuff, but people call them soft skills because that diminishes them slightly. But as we look forward to how things are changing, right, let's just talk about AI for a second. I'm not an AI expert, right? But I do know the values that Brad mentioned it before. You know, how many roles are being changed. You can get a photographer to take a picture for you. AI can produce the same thing. Our leadership roles are changing as well. AI will write that report for you. AI will write your strategic plan. AI will make recommendations on what you should do next as a business based on the information that you feed into it. What AI will not do is inspire your people. What AI will not do is build trust and psychological safety. It won't build a relationship with you unless you read Take a Break magazine, because there's a couple of people who feel like they've married AI, but you know, we'll gloss over that. AI will not shape your culture, right? It might give you recommendations on how you might shape your culture. It might give you although I've done a bit of playing with this myself in my field and asking AI about what it recommends I can do or what I should do with organizations. And it always comes back to process. It kind of misses out the human element, as thank God you would expect it to. But it also will not lead with empathy, okay? Empathy doesn't make us weak. Empathy shows that we are vulnerable, which actually creates a level of psychological safety with other people. It would have been dead easy for me to stand up here and not bring my notes with me and waffle my way through and go off on a tangent if I needed to. But you know what? I'm a little bit vulnerable, guys. I'm just human. I make mistakes. I like to keep myself accountable and on track. Something sometimes comes with leadership where we suddenly feel like we need to be the person with all the answers, the person who always gets it right, the person who never makes a mistake. And that's really intimidating now. And also, it's just completely unsustainable. Brad talked before about what percentage is your battery on. We need to be making and embracing vulnerability and courage in our organizations in order to be able to move and thrive. And that's how we get the best out of people. Going back to the neuroscience, when we, the way that our brain has evolved, kind of going back over, really, the brain structure about 45 million years. When it first developed, when we were right, can I just say, spoiler alert, if anyone doesn't believe in evolution, you're about to be quite upset by what I'm about to say, so feel free to leave now. I've had that before, which is why I say it. About 45 million years ago, these creatures climbed out the primordial soup. 450 million years ago, my apologies, just missed off 100 million years. And these creatures climbed out the primordial soup, and the brain was here, right? So it was in the center of the organism. And it stayed that way for about, well, till 250 million years ago, where it began to migrate up the body, and it settled here. And then around 2.5 million years ago, we as human beings developed the final bit of our brain, that's the bit of the brain that sets us apart from most other creatures on the planet, right? So the first bit that developed when it was here, it was responsible for something called the 4 Fs. Fight, flight, feeding, and we'll call the other one reproduction. But basically survival of the species, right? You get the gist. So it's responsible for keeping us alive, this bit of our brain. And then next we developed this bit, which is the piece that stores our emotion and our memory. It's the bit that makes us have a community together. And then last but not least, we get this 2.5 million year old thing, which helps us to have communication in the sense that we do, right? So language comes from here. All of our analytical and critical thinking comes from this part of the brain as well. When something happens to us in work that triggers our fight or flight response, the really old bit, right? And bear in mind, that bit of your brain was designed for like life or death stuff. So it was designed so that when the saber-toothed tiger turned up, like you were going to do something about it. You were going to run away, you were going to fight it, whatever it was going to be. Nowadays, thank God, most of us don't have that kind of threat on a day-to-day basis, right? So this part of our brain doesn't really know what to do with itself. So when you get an email that comes in from your boss, or the person that annoys you the most, or that really difficult client, or the phone rings, or whatever it might be, sometimes those things can trigger that fight or flight response, and our body's dead clever, right? So what it does in those instances is it diminishes the amount of blood that it flows to the other two parts of the brain, and it floods that bit with blood, which means that we are not doing analytical thinking, we're not processing emotion and memory the way that we should, we are just focused on survival. If my people don't feel safe at work, they're sitting in a state of fight or flight for a significantly longer period of time than they should. Now, through that explanation I've just given you, we know that in that time, the analytical brain is not working the way that it should when they're under that state. So if my culture is not defined, if people are feeling under threat in one way or another, now I know we can't eliminate it completely, but if we don't work our hardest to make sure that we create those kind of environments for people around us, if your clients aren't working to make sure that they're creating that environment around their people, they are not performing at their best. You will not get the results that you want from your organization because your people have gone into prehistoric brain mode. Fun fact, because that got a bit serious. In your gut, you still have the same number of brain cells that a domestic cat has in their head. Google it, it's true. They're just not wired the same. But that's why it's so important. You know that saying we say nowadays, trust your gut? That's why, because there's something, the gut cells that are connected to our brain cells in that way are actually really good at telling us when something doesn't feel right. Okay, so here's my question to you then, and to take away. Share this question, write it down, take a photograph of it, whatever you need to do to be able to go back and have the conversation in your own cultures, and to be able to pass on to other people to encourage them to have the conversation within their cultures too. How is your leadership shaping up? What is it made of? And I've given you some examples on here. Some of my leadership might be based on my biases because of the stuff I've learned before. Some of it's going to come from my passion because I want to make a difference for people. Some of it might come from the investment, the time that I'm putting in to learn how to be different, to learn new skills, to be better, to be creative, to inspire other people around me, to challenge the things that I often say, oh, well, I've always done it that way. A lot of our leadership is often shaped by external pressures. We become reactive rather than proactive. This thing is happening, I need to do this in response. That thing's kicking off at the office, I need to do that in response. Whereas when we really define our cultures and we really define our leadership and how we want to show up, we understand our leadership styles, how we're going to inspire our people to move forward, to have some autonomy, to grow. And I know that sometimes growing other leaders within our organizations can be scary, because none of us want to feel replaceable. But there's a mindset shift? That was nearly a rude word. There was a mindset shift around taking your brain from feeling threat and competition, which pushes you into fight or flight mode, and taking a more proactive approach, which actually enables you to be the best version of you. So, final thought then. And I just want this, if you forget everything else that I've said, I just want this to linger with you for a second. Leadership is like Play-Doh. When you shape it with purpose, the possibilities are endless. But if your leadership is sat on the shelf, and you're not playing with it, you're not challenging it, you're not stretching it, what message are you sending out to the people around you? I'm around afterwards for any questions or anything you might have. You can find me on LinkedIn and at the following places. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Go play with your Play-Doh.